Hello and welcome everyone. Glad you're here. Thanks for joining. I'm Jamie. I'm on the resource team and I'm going to be kicking things off today. I thought we might be able to start with a quick grounding activity. So let's begin here for a second. I'd like to invite you to start by just taking a deep breath, maybe the deepest breath you have taken all day. You can focus on the vision of the mountain, or you can turn internally for this. And if you want to close your eyes for this, I'll be clear about when we close the activity. So get comfortable, relax your jaw, relax into your body. And if there's any distractions, just let them melt away, at least for this time that we have together. They'll be waiting for you when you return. Just take a moment to remember what's bringing you here today. What's your purpose? Bring to mind yourself, your partners, your community, your project. And for all of those people and for yourself, imagine the brightest visions for everyone becoming a reality. Imagine what that world would look like, what would be different. And just spend a few moments in that world. Notice how you feel. So for our time together, try to remain tapped into that place of possibility. Take that good energy, those feelings, and bring that into our space for today. And when you're ready, come back from your vision. Start to turn your attention back to your body, back to this group. And if you've closed your eyes, you can open them as you're ready. I'm going to be back again in just a little bit and walk through the agenda. But first, I would like to pass things over to Courtney to share a little bit around centering our purpose.
Thank you, Jamie. Hi, everybody. Great to see you. My name is Courtney Spearman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm with the National Endowment for the Arts, and I manage the Design Grant Program, and I'm the acting director for Design and Creative Placemaking. I've been working on the Our Town program for a long time. Hope I've interacted with some of you in the past. Super excited to be here today as we dive into this partnership session. Immense gratitude to Jamie for helping us lead this today. It's going to be a great one. You may be wondering, but I hope not, about why we're offering a session on partnership. Hopefully all of you are conscious of how important partnership is for the Our Town program. Along with our systems change orientation, partnership is one of the two real hallmarks of the Our Town program. Specifically, we require a committed partnership between a local government entity or a tribal entity and a nonprofit organization with at least one partner strong in arts and culture. We also encourage a broader coalition of partnerships across sectors and interests. Partnerships anchor the Our Town projects in the community and ensure that a broad spectrum of community voices are represented in the projects. Partnerships also help us embed projects in community and broaden their impact, encouraging lasting change long after a project might be finished. Hopefully you've had a chance to watch our Foundations workshop from February and maybe checked out the zine we produced following that event. That workshop offered an overview of partnerships, engagement, and working with artists. Today, we're going to get into more of the nuts and bolts of partnerships, and we'll cover engagement and working with artists in upcoming workshops. In case you haven't seen earlier workshops, those recordings and tools on partnership are available on the CPTA website, and I think they're going to drop a link in the chat for that. So if you haven't accessed the toolkit there, those are great resources to have at the ready. We have a lot to cover today, and we're not going to be able to cover all of it. We have chosen a few things to focus on based on input from ongoing conversations, and we encourage you to talk more about partnership issues in office hours and in one-on-one TA. As you go through today's session, we hope you come out with a feeling refreshed and hopeful about partnerships and what they can contribute to successful projects. feeling good about moving forward in projects and navigating challenges like power dynamics and conflict, have a greater sense of building a cohort of peers in this work, and have some new and more useful tools and templates in your creative placemaking toolbox. So with that, I will pass it back to Jamie. Thanks to all of you for being here today.
Oh, and I think Melissa's going to jump in real quick with some community guidelines.
Thanks, Jamie and Courtney. Hi, I'm Melissa Kim. I'm the director of the Creative Placemaking Technical Assistance Program. It's good to see you all here. I'm joined by lots of resource team members who there are too many to name right now, but you'll meet them in breakout rooms and throughout the session. So today's workshop is part of a host of offerings, including one-on-one consultations, monthly office hours, and more workshops, all by our fantastic resource team members. To sign up for consultation, you would simply put time on my calendar, and I'll put a link in the chat in a minute. And to see our upcoming events, our office hours and our workshops, you can always check out our webpage. And we'll put that link in the chat too. We want to make sure that you have access to the workbook that we'll be using throughout the session. And Ali, if you could put that link in the chat. It's a Google Doc, it's a PDF that you can't write on. So if you wanted to take notes, you might want to grab a pen and some paper. Next, we wanted to offer you a couple of community guidelines, so to help us strive for a welcoming and affirming time together. First, we invite you to change your name, your Zoom name tag, to include your pronouns. You can do that by going to the upper right-hand corner of your video and clicking on rename. Next, closed captioning is available. So if you wanted to turn on or off English closed captions, just go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and you'll see 3 dots and you can click show subtitle. Next, as Ali noted, our presentations will be recorded, but the breakout sessions will not. And if you're feeling camera shy or voice shy, feel free to just turn off your video and mute yourself. So we will share out the recording, the slides, and all the notes generated from the knowledge, from the knowledge here today via email, and we'll also post it on our website. Finally, we're here today to learn together and to connect with each other. So we really want you to listen deeply, make no assumptions, and please, please, please use the chat. Feel free. And now we want to start using the chat right now by saying hi. So please, in the chat, write your name and location, and maybe one word describing how you're entering the space today. And as you think about your location, we're offering in the chat a link to a map maintained by Native Land Digital, which is an important reminder that the place we call home first belonged to Indigenous people. And we encourage you to visit the website and learn about the lands you inhabit. And now I'm going to hand it back to Jamie.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, let's go over our agenda today and see what's coming up. So we've got a lot of things to talk about. Building partnerships, what does that look like to do it positively, constructively? And then we'll get into some deeper examples. And also we have some very special guests today. I'm super excited. Forklift Danceworks, Allison and Lisa Byrd are here. So they're going to be sharing their expertise and you'll be able to have conversation with them, but we'll be able to hear some stories that relate specifically around partnership building based on the work they've been doing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what does it look like to navigate conflict. Again, we'll share some tools, we'll have some conversation, we'll bring Allison and Lisa back in for that, and you'll be able to ask your questions. At the top of the hour or around about that, we're going to take a break. And then you'll have a chance to do a deeper dive with fellow grantees and talk about the things that you want to talk about. And then we're going to just share out some extra resources towards the end. And for those who stick around to the end, special announcement, Allison has a new book coming out, which relates exactly to what we're talking about today. It hasn't been released yet. We are giving away 3 books today. So if you stick on the call, we're going to do a drawing and you can be a lucky winner. So stay tuned for that. And then we'll do a quick checkout. All right. I hope you're excited. So one thing that I want to mention about what we're talking about today is that there's no like one size fits all. There's many different ways to think about partnership building. So while we're going to share some tools, take them and adapt them. And then there's many ways to participate in the chat. Listening is participating also. We might ask for you to unmute sometimes and share a few things, and then we're going to have lots of space for discussion. So what we'd really like is for you to share your expertise. I believe strongly in the wisdom in the room. Everybody here is an expert and has something great to share about the work you've been doing. And we'd like to take the resources that you offer up, and we're actually going to make them into like a toolkit share out that gets sent back to you after this. And it will also be online, and it could help future grantees. So let's see what resources we can crowdsource today. And then related, I wonder if any of you have ever wondered, is there like an easy button that I can use for this work, or at least a little piece of it? I would like that too. So the tools that we're sharing might help get closer to that, but again, it's not a cookie cutter model. So take what works for you. If it doesn't work, toss it, modify it and adapt to fit your needs. And then we'll also be able to get into some more specific contextual questions too. So just see what works for you or what resonates. All right, so back to partnerships. In thinking about how you're entering into this space, you might be an artist, you might be working with an arts agency, you might be with a government agency, but let's find out a little bit more about where you're coming in from. So I'd love for you to put in the chat or unmute real quick. Let us know, what is the sector that you're coming in from? Right, seeing higher education, artist, government. Awesome. We've got a really interesting mix today. This is great. Bonus question. Is anybody here on this call also a partner in this work with somebody else on the call? If so, just give us a little wave. Anybody have a partner on this call? All right. Awesome. Okay, so this is great because the tools that we're sharing, the things we're talking about, it's not a secret. It's something that you can use and talk with your partners about together. So for those of you who are on the call together, this is great. You'll have something to talk about after the call based on these resources. All right, I'm seeing community development, also arts, lots of government. Welcome, welcome. This is going to be a great way to share some resources. So just taking one step back a bit, we had a foundations workshop in February, and we talked about kind of mapping out your environment. Who are the people involved or who might be impacted by the work that you're doing? So today kind of builds off of that. So the invitation, which is in your worksheet, all of these things are in your worksheet, is just thinking about, so who of these folks are currently partners? Who's not yet a partner? What would it look like to make an invitation to bring even more people into the fold? And related to that, one of the things that we talked about was a design spiral or a design path, which might be twisting and turning and take different routes. And ultimately, whatever that route takes, just really thinking about community being at the heart of the design and circling back and thinking about who else to invite, who's missing, who can we bring back in? Because at its nature, this work of community placekeeping, place building, placemaking is relational. So what are the relationships that we're building? So think a little bit about that. And then I want to ask you, what are some of the questions around partnerships that you have today? What's bringing you here? Feel free to start dropping some things into the chat. And what we're going to be doing is just gathering a few notes. We're going to take all these questions and put them into this board. And then we're going to circle back around on this and see what you all came up with so we can look at them all at the same time. And then there might be something for Allison and Lisa in here. We might see where this goes in conversation. So I would love for you to just think about that. While we're going through tools, let's get this chat really active. Feel free to be dropping in questions, adding in resources. You might know something, you likely will know something different from other folks, from me, and the things that we're presenting. So let's see what we can come up with. All right. So think about your questions, add them in. We have awesome note takers today. Okay, so I want to share with you 5 tools to begin with that you can use. These are in your worksheets. The first one is kind of around orienting together with your partners. So it could be used at the start of your project, but this is something that can be used at any point in time during your project. Something that you can circle back to and check in on and see, is this thing still true today? Did something change in our project trajectory that makes part of this work different? And the idea here is really just, you'll all have different values coming in, which is great, and different perspectives, and that makes your project better. But if you sit down and have a conversation about this, what does it look like? So the first one is really about context. What's the background of how this work came together? Some partners might need to be filled in on that. And then what is currently true for every person involved? How do you see this? How do I see this? What are we agreeing to do? Can we make that clear? And then what are the values that we bring into this partnership? What do we value about being in partnership? Sometimes just stopping and asking some powerful questions can be really transformational for the relationships. This is a way to get started, or a way to check in, all of the above. So here's an example of one of your worksheet pages. This is a tool around asset building. And the idea here is kind of like community asset mapping, although it's more for individuals and your partners who are coming in. What are the assets that we each bring to this partnership? Sometimes you don't know all the qualities and gifts that people can offer or might have resources or connections to. So it can be helpful to just have a conversation around, well, what are the things I'm willing to offer that exist within my ecosystem? The same for you, my partner or partners. What does that look like for all of you? And then this tool can be something that you reference back to as the project moves forward, because directions might change and you need to pull on different resources. So that is the idea for that tool. And all of these can kind of build on each other, as you'll see in a bit here. This tool we've talked about a little bit in the past. So this one is around a spectrum of collaboration. I've done a talk on this last year with the NEA, so you can look back to that link. But then also during our foundations training, Michael mentioned another model for spectrum of engagement. There are many different ways to think about this. So in trying to simplify it down, the idea is if you're working with your partners and you're thinking about the level of collaboration or degree of collaboration that you want to have, that each person wants to have, where would you fall into a spectrum? And then you could break that down into different parts. So for example, if we think about just project ideation, what would be our decision-making power in that, or our level of collaboration together? Would it be all me creating the ideas and setting the stage? Would it be all my partner? Would it be somewhere in between? And remember that partner can be community at large. So you can think about this of project execution. Where would we be on that degree? You could think about it on validation or evaluation. There's other examples in your worksheets. You could also think about this in terms of contracting or budgeting. Who has the decision-making power around that? What does it look like when we're working with artists, and how we choose to pay people fairly? Okay, so this is just a way to get on the same page, because then when you get to the point of making decisions, it's a lot easier. So let's say you've worked on some of those tools. You've talked about the assets that you have to share. You have that background context. You've discussed what amount of collaboration each person wants to have. And then when everybody thinks about additionally their capacity to be able to show up, what would the roles look like for that? Can you map those out and get real specific? Maybe for each of those different components, what would that look like? And then from there, you can really start to move forward on your action taking. So the example on the right is a pretty typical action plan, modify to your needs, right? But who's doing what and by when? And then how do we hold each other accountable? How do we agree to do that? And when are we going to meet? What are the conditions of how we're going to meet to be able to keep moving forward? Okay. And then when you're thinking about making decisions, here is just a sketch, an idea of one way to get on the same page with people. This could be a tool used to say, okay, I think we're at the idea generating point of our decision-making trajectory. Is that where you think we're at? Are we at the point of making a decision? What else needs to happen before we can make a decision? Sometimes conflict can emerge when people think they're at different points along that decision-making trajectory. So it can be just a simple way to point to, okay, this is where I think we're at. Is this a discussion right now? Or is this a decision? That could be another helpful way to think about it and introduce it. And you might have many different points along this kind of sketch. This could also be something where you're talking about your timeline as a whole, and the points that are on this sketch are about, are we starting the project? Is this project ideation still? Are we executing the project right now? When are we validating this? So there's a lot of different ways that you could use this to get on the same page with people. So I want to pause and just ask you, what are some of the go-to tools that you use to orient with your partners? What are some of the things that you've tried? I'd love if somebody has a quick example just to unmute, and let's hear what you've got.
Sorry, no video here, but this is Grace Kim from the Praise House Project, Charmaine Minifield's public art and community initiative-based project. We focus on lesser known community narratives, especially those of Black communities that have either been erased or under threat currently from gentrification. And we have partners in different areas of Atlanta, Georgia, different neighborhoods, and where we will be installing a Praise House, which is a physical installation with community programming surrounding it. So, right, what we do is, what we have done is identified partners. And then when we have conversations with them, meetings with them, our first priority is asking them, well, what is it that you are doing in your work of cultural preservation, historic preservation, and what is it that you need to be highlighted? What can we do to bring attention to the work that you are doing? And specifically, whether it's like a capital campaign, for instance, with Southview Cemetery, who's one of our partners, or with the historic downtown development district in the King District. They have a huge new development initiative around sustainability. And so we are looking for ways to then promote and support what they are doing. So that is one of the ways. And we have two partners. Well, of course, Charmaine Midfield's on the call, and then Dr. Candy Tate, our Emory University institutional partners, on the line too. So if y'all want to also jump on what we do, would love to hear.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Grace. So also, I just put in the chat, tried to paraphrase or kind of quote what you had just said. So if there's anything you want to add, please add that to the chat, and then we'll add that to our resources, because that's a great question. That's an example of a powerful question to ask. So this might come up in your breakout rooms too, kind of building on what Grace was talking about, and we will have more space for that as well. But first, I want to share with you two more potential resources that you could use. And this is around the relational aspect of your partnership. The other pieces are as well, and they have a little bit more framing. This is more dialogical and using dialogue. But I think about what are some of the ways that we could come together and ask powerful questions of each other that maybe haven't been done before. And what's the type of relationship that we want to build? So talking with your partners about what would it look like to be in a good relationship together. That can be really impactful, especially if you're asked and you haven't been asked that before, to start to set the stage differently. And then what do we each need around strong and meaningful partnerships? What would that look like for us? And then related to that, thinking about our ways of being that we set with one another can be really impactful and important, and can also be something that we can fall back on if the dynamic starts to change in unhealthy or unhelpful ways. So sometimes the way that I like to do this with groups and partners is just to start our list. What are our ways of being together, whether that's in partnership, in community, however you might like to phrase that. And it's setting community norms or agreements. And then these things can be used on a wall when you're in a meeting. It can be printed out. They're things that you can constantly return to. They can be added to and modified. But the important thing here is they're co-created by community. So people see themselves reflected in what's created here. I have a list of agreements as examples. I'll just add they're very, they're context specific and community specific. So modify to fit for your community, right? And there's so many different ways that people have come up with this. I would love if you could place in the chat just what are some go-to agreements that you really love to use? Agreements, community norms. What are some things that you've seen that have been helpful? And then we'll add that to our crowdsourced list. And those can be things that you can utilize in the future. So I want to, I'm going to pass things off to Forklift. And we're going to hear some really awesome stories and examples from Allison and Lisa. And then I'm going to come back in and we're going to have just a conversation with you all. Be thinking again about your questions. I'm going to bring them up in a little bit so we can see what you've got so far. But then we're just going to talk about the things you want to bring up with Allison and Lisa. So I'm going to pass it. We can stop this screen share and start your screen share. And then I'm just going to pass it over to you both. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Allison Orr, founder and artistic director of Forklift Danceworks.
And I'm Lisa Byrd, and we always laugh about my title. So you can chime in if you want and give me a title, but right now it's organizational strategist.
Lisa and I have been working together for a long time, and I wanted to say first, we at Forklift Danceworks, we are currently an our town fundee, just like you all, and we are deep in partnership building for our current project with Austin's Watershed Protection Department. This is our second our town. Our first one was with Austin Aquatics and our Parks Department here in Austin and 3 East Austin neighborhoods. So we're in it with you. Forklift has been around for about 20 years, a little more. And I hope today is helpful for you all. First, I just raised a little quick hand. I'm going to take a look at you. Anybody preview the videos? Did you have a chance? Did anybody have a chance to look at anything that was sent or? Okay. So I'm thinking I'm going to back up a little bit and say that we at Forklift Danceworks are a community-based arts organization. So we are artists ourselves. We are self-producing artists here in Austin, Texas. So those of you who are artists, we don't represent city government, even though we partner with city government, and we partner with neighborhood leaders, local activists, and other community organizations. We have been partnering with city departments here in Austin, like I said, for a little over 20 years, and we're currently on our 8th partnership with a City of Austin department. So we know a little bit about working with government. We've also been working with neighborhoods all along as well. And so I think what I'll start by saying is that we as artists really embed within communities, both city departments and neighborhoods. And so we really build everything through relationship. And I just wanted to echo what Jamie said, that you're seeing that here in this work, and all that Lisa and I are going to share in the next few minutes is built on 20 plus years of work in Austin. This did not happen overnight. It did not happen in a year. It did not happen in 2 years. Right, Lisa? So this is just to give you some context. We've been doing this for a long time and have been building relationships within the city of Austin in the variety of departments and within neighborhoods and with city leaders of all kinds for a long time. The project that we were funded with through the Our Town grant for the first time was My Park, My Pool, My City, which was a 3-year residency with Austin Aquatics to drive deeper understanding around our local pools. And here you see Given Swims, which was our culminating performance in 2019. So first, when we think about our partnerships, let's go to next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to talk about what we mean by Get Clear.
So, yeah, so Get Clear is about when you are thinking about partnerships. First, you have to be clear about what your own intention is. Forklift is an arts organization. We create work, and so what we had to ask ourselves: what are our goals in creating this work, and what are our partners' goals? And in this case, with city government, it's kind of tricky, and it's a fine line that Forklift has to walk, and especially with the pool project. This specific project, Givens Pool, is in a historically Black neighborhood, and Givens Park is really a central gathering place for the community. The pool is very important to the community, and what the city was asking Forklift essentially to do was to kind of be the go-between with the community to say, we have to close your pool because of problems with the pool. So that's a political decision, right? And so Forklift had to get clear on what was its perspective in telling the story, right? How does it enter the story, and who really are they representing? Are they representing the city? Are they representing the community? Or are they representing themselves with their own perspective on the issue? So getting clear is the first thing we do when we start any project, is what is our perspective on the project? What is our storytelling capacity, our storytelling ability, and who do we want to include in that? Who do we want to go to and ask to be partners outside of city government?
So the second step that we think about is warmest connection. I think go to next slide. And when we think about the warmest connection, I have learned to never enter a conversation, a meeting, ask for a partnership cold. So I don't make a cold call. I figure out who we know that knows somebody within that neighborhood, within that church, within that school, within that city department. And we really work to walk ourselves in with an introduction. People are busy, people are over, there's a lot going on for folks. And so it really helps to have someone vet you and take you with them. I'm going to, next slide.
So find the leaders, and it's great you have a picture of Nook. So find the leaders, as you know, in marketing terms, they use find the tastemakers, right? So find the leaders depending on the issue, depending on what the organizing principle is, who in the community is addressing that issue, who in the community do people look to, who in the community really are activating around that issue. And that's where you start, you know, that's where, and that's also who you might want to include. So this photo, this young man, Nook Turner, he's a rap artist. He's a hip hop artist out of Austin. He's from that neighborhood and has spent many, many years in that specific park. So he was a natural for us to say, Nook, partner with us on this project. So he had to ask, right, what is the project? What is our perspective? How, you know, what is that connection that he will have finding the leaders, finding the voices in that community who we can attach to and who has a mutual understanding of where we're trying to go.
Great. Next slide is listen for need. I've already heard this come up so far in our time together today. We are constantly listening for the need. What need is our project addressing for our partners? And we hold ourselves accountable to that. So what is the need of the neighborhood elders, the neighborhood youth, the parents, again, the city department, which has all levels of need. So, again, we have to get clear on what do we have capacity to address, but that really drives our goals, our timelines, our programming is what is the need? What is the need we're hearing and that we're validating with the partners? And lastly, yes, the city has needs too.
Yes. Reciprocity. So, and I think that it was mentioned a little earlier, and reciprocity has a lot to do with a power dynamic, right? Or, or some sense of equity, or some sense of partners coming together equally to the table. And I like and so it's important that we understand what our role is and the many roles that we need to make a project succeed. And that, I think, is reciprocity.
These are amazing, Allison and Lisa. Thank you so much.
Lisa,
Okay.
this is Marty. Could you just say the last part again, please?
Well, I think my point is that that we as artists have a certain role in a large project. Like with Givens, what the issue is what the issue from the city's perspective is, how do we tell this community we need to shut the pool down? What the issue from the community's perspective is, why are these people who haven't given us anything in this community for decades, historically, I don't want to hear this message. And so reciprocity is that we are all able to sit at the table and everybody gets a little bit of what they need and want. It's the grand negotiation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so I want to give folks an opportunity to ask any questions that are coming up for them. And then let's, Allie, could we share the Miro board once more? I just want to show everybody what questions have been coming up thus far. There are a number related to navigating conflict. So we're going to get into that just in a second. But I want to show folks what might be to come. And then are there any questions you want to bring up right now? Take a look at that.
Hi, this is Candy. Not that Praise House wants to dominate. I'm sure others have questions as well. But as I'm hearing you talking about managing a municipality, has been somewhat difficult for the university on this project to really get our second Praise House funded. And so, and then with COVID and other issues that the city government is dealing with, an art project hasn't been top of list. So how do we find common priorities, I guess, as I'm asking the question, I'm answering maybe, but any thoughts on that, or anyone else who's had that happen, and how did you get a non-responsive municipality to jump on board with your project?
I can start, and then Lisa, if you've got, I mean, you need to go find a champion in that municipality. You probably need to go have lunches with people, and city people are really busy and they're covered up. And I like to say that a city department is not inherently a place of innovation. It's a place that's risk averse. It's rigid. The systems are rigid, and there's good people there wanting to do good work, but the system itself fights against that. And so So you got to go hang out, you got to go see people, you got to go take them to lunch, you got to go make yourself their new best friend, and you need to find a champion inside that department that will take your need up the ladder. But and that won't be on email, and it's going to be person to person, and I would just say you start listening and find those leaders. And we've only succeeded when we find our champions who are willing to go to bat for us, because what we're asking is a lot. We're asking this city department to come through a highly disorienting process with us. And they fight tooth and nail. But if you can find the person or the persons that really believe in what you're doing, then they're the ones who'll take it up the chain at the city.
Yeah, Allison is very good at finding those champions, and she's a lunching. But also from my perspective is you also have to find out what it is that they need or want, right? What and center that in your conversation. It's like how you can help them, and that's what I call the great negotiation. Because what a city government or the bureaucracy wants is certainly not what a community wants, and it's certainly not what an artist wants. But somewhere in there, you'll find that space.
Thanks for your question. And as I am looking around, I'm seeing a few things here related to power dynamics, conflict that might arise. So let's jump into that right now. And then we're going to bring Allison and Lisa back. So take a look at those questions, both of you, and then see if there's any you might want to respond to. And then I'm going to ask all of you again in just a bit, what are the questions around conflict navigation do you want to discuss? So let's dive into it. Let me transfer over to the right slide. Give me a moment. Okay. I want to hear from you. What is your particular conflict confidence level? So for this purpose, just work with whatever comes up for you as you think about the definition of conflict. But I'd love for you to enter in the chat, including, you can do 1.2, 1.4, right? What that looks like to you. And I've kind of created extremes on purpose here. So one is more like, I avoid conflict at all costs. It makes me sick. I need to stay away from it. Moving to number 2 is like kind of starting to get a little bit more balance. To some degree, I can work with conflict. Sometimes I'm personally impacted. And then over on level 3, we're thinking wizard level conflict management, that you're able to use conflict as a tool and help navigate through any issues with your partners. So if you are a willing volunteer, if you would just add in the chat what comes up for you. An emoji, it could be a number, right? What comes up when you think about conflict management? A quick non-scientific survey here. All right. Awesome. Okay, it is great to see the range here. So we've got 1.5 to maybe 2.5 so far, and also some words that are coming up. Great. Okay, yeah, it can be exhausting. Let's talk about that. Okay, and emoji reactions. This is great. Okay. So what I'm going to use as a definition around our purposes today is just thinking about conflict as something that feels incongruent. It feels disharmonious. It feels out of alignment. And sometimes the disruption that feels like or creates, it can feel like something that's a minor annoyance, or it can feel like a major chasm. So we're going to talk about some tools that might help you build bridges when you notice that incongruence is showing up. All right. So now that we're kind of thinking around conflict and conflict management or navigation, what are some questions that you would like to focus on around that in particular? Start adding them into the chat, and then we're going to add them to this board. and then have a chance to dive into a few of them, both with Allison and Lisa, and then also in our future breakout room conversations. So what is coming up for you that feels important to talk about today? Okay, we will come back to that. So when I think about conflict, I think about what are some of the things that first are within my realm of control. And that's where I kind of want to focus today in part. And that's what are the responses that I have. In this case, how do you respond to conflict? I'm talking about when you get stressed out from conflict, what are the responses that you have energetically? What do you notice about your behavior? Because that is one realm that you can control. So it could look something like this particular model around fight, flight, freeze, or tend and befriend. All of these things relate to sorts of survival patterns that we can get into when we want to try to create more safety for ourselves. And oftentimes when conflict arises and it maybe appears as though it is a behavior that shows up that's different for folks, it is that there is a need there underlying it. And someone is maybe just a little bit ungracefully trying to ask for it. But that's important to pay attention to. So just something to think about, what shows up for you there. But there's good news. Somebody mentioned it in the chat. One sure way to kind of emerge from being in this sort of pattern is to get present. So I'm curious for all of you what that looks like. How do you get present and come back into the clear moment of the current reality? It could be taking a break. Sometimes when a disruption happens, everybody just needs to take a break and then regroup. It could be going outside, getting some fresh air, focusing on the breath, breathing, just like we did when we started this particular workshop. Could be going and getting some exercise, journaling. Somebody mentioned meditation. Share what works for you in the chat if you would. And then those can be part of our resource list of, if there's a point when you're feeling stressed from conflict, maybe you can turn to some of those things to get back to presence. When we're able to get back to presence, we can be more of a clear and neutral witness around our own, the own ways that we show up, and start to be more resourced in what to do next. Great, we've got meditation, breathing, forgiveness, yes, patience, and empathy. Wonderful. Being clear on goals. Yeah, how do we get clear? Take a walk. Find a neutral person to talk with this about. These are great. Awesome, okay, yeah, keep them coming. And then I will share one more about the role that time can play in creating conflict. A few things to think about here are that there are different concepts of time, and that folks coming into your particular meetings or work together might all have very differing concepts. So how do you be respectful of people's time, and then also think about the cultural differences and perspectives on time and create meetings according to that? How do you maintain a respect around people's time according to partner schedules and making accommodations so that people can show up? And then how do you make time to process information? One of the ways that a meeting can have conflict created is simply because an agenda was moving too fast and people didn't have time to process information that was happening. So anytime an agenda is pushed through at the expense of processing or the time that people need, conflict will happen. So just think about how you can always make more time in your agenda. And then here are just a few thoughts on maybe language and using that with intention. So going back to the tools that we talked about before, can you identify what is happening underneath the conflict? You might need to ask some questions, or you might need to just spend some time reflecting. But for example, is this a misunderstanding? If so, could we go back to our worksheet on orienting ourselves around the project and see where we can get clarity in what's true for all of us? Is this about a power dynamic? If so, can we go back to our spectrum of collaboration and look at how we might do things differently? Is it about decision-making? Can we use the sketch for that? Is it about harm caused? Do we need an outside facilitator, a neutral party to be part of this? And then how am I reacting to this situation? What do I need to be resourced in order to come back into this work well? I've also added in a few questions that could be helpful. Again, it's about customizing to your needs and thinking about how it might be delivered. That's as important as the words you use. And then just thinking about within this context, conflict can be your friend. And when you're creating systems change, that can be the tool that you use to move things forward. So let's look quickly at any questions that people have come up with and see what's emerged. Okay. And we've got about 2 minutes here. I'd love to invite Allison and Lisa back, just if there's something you'd like to share in response to these questions or a quick anecdote around navigating conflict. What are your go-to methods?
Lisa, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I kind of put in the chat about staying clear on your goals. And so if you're talking about conflict with your partner, I think a lot of that, well, it's two things around clarity. The cause of the conflict, it's usually a communication. And so if you are clear about what communicating the goals, but also clarity on the goals also allows you to know the point in which to enter a conflict, right? Or not to participate in the conflict if it is not something that is essential to leading you to your goals, right? And so it becomes a reflection, like, do I really need to respond to this? Is this something that is going to impede the project, impede getting to goal A or goal B, or is it just a human being a human and I just acknowledge that someone said something I didn't like, but we keep moving, right?
I would say that conflict is part of the process of building relationships with human beings. It will happen. It doesn't necessarily mean something is wrong. That's just part of it. I do want to echo Marty's earlier point about as you're trying to build relationship, particularly inside of an institution like a city, it's great to ask, because city folks I've found, they're good people and also it's a hard, challenging job. And so, why are they there? What is it about the job that they love? What do they wish one person knew about them and their fellow workers? So that helps to ground a relationship. But I will say with my key city partner at one project, we would have meetings and he would just have to yell at me for about 10 minutes before we could start to work. And I had to remember that it wasn't personal, that he was under a lot of stress. And I happened to be, if I wanted to get this work done with him, I was just gonna have to buck up and just relax. And so to me, that wasn't a moment to say, all right, this partnership has to change. That was me understanding the position that what he needed for our work and our collaboration. And he was moving major things at the Austin Power Company for me. He was moving. But as a partner in a relationship, he had let off some steam. So then in community, the same thing happens. We show up as outsiders. I'm typically not working in my own neighborhood, and people have lots of reasons to be mad. There's lots of things that are happening that people are rightfully upset about. And sometimes that comes at us and we make mistakes. We have to apologize, but I think the thing is to really stay attuned to the relationship and what it means to show up for people and build that trust. And sometimes the trust gets built by staying there while somebody's upset and, continuing to look in them in the eye and admit to my own part in that or not, or hold the space for it. So I'm talking from a really personal perspective. I did see the question about transitory nature of cities. Yes, people come and go. So you have to build multiple allies within the organization. And if you are able to be there for a long time, that will happen. But you do need multiple allies because people will move on and do other things. Other things, Lisa, or anything else there, Jamie?
Well, I think this is what you both are mentioning. I mean, you're talking about a lot of resourcing that you've been gaining as you've been working on this work for so long. And then just navigating it in the moment too. So hearing how you're navigating that is really helpful, I think. And I want to be honoring our upcoming break time, but also if you are thinking, boy, we just didn't get enough time to talk with Allison and Lisa, guess what? 2 lucky groups of people will have one of them in their upcoming breakout room. So let me quickly share with you what's going to happen next, and then we'll head into a break. So we are going to take a break at the top of the hour. We'll come back and divide into smaller groups where you'll really get a chance to learn about each other's projects in relation to the partnerships that you have as well, and be able to ask questions of each other and then offer some advice to one another and gain some expertise in the room. So you'll have we're gonna have about 20 minutes once we come back from the break, but let's take a break now from the top of the hour and let's go until 2:05 Central, and we'll come back and we'll start moving into breakouts. All right. See you in a bit. All right, everyone. So let's jump into breakout sessions and hear from one another. Here's how it will work. We'll have about 10 minutes. It might be a little bit more if we are in our rooms a little bit faster, but kind of 2 rounds. Everybody will have a chance to share a little bit about your project and also as it relates to partnerships, since we're here to talk about that today. And then what is your top partnership question that you really want to ask? Because now is your chance to bring it up and dive into that with your group. And then after everyone's had a chance to go around, you'll have 10 minutes again and kind of a second round to offer up your advice or other resources that you know of that could relate to the questions the people in your room are asking. There will be 2 resource team members in your room as well. One person will be loosely facilitating, and then one person will be taking notes. And when we jump out of our groups again, since you all didn't get to hear everyone's conversations, we're going to share out just the Twitter version of the top highlights, and then any other resources, notes, we're going to put together as part of that toolkit to send out to everybody. So again, crowdsourcing the wisdom in the room. Any questions before we head into breakouts? Okay. Well, whenever you are ready to send us into Zoom, Zoom us away, and we'll see you at the bottom of the hour. How were those conversations? Show of hands, thumbs up, emojis. All right, pretty good. Okay, let's get the screen shared started again, and let's talk about the key highlights that have come up from our group conversations. So we are going to move by room. And let me check, are you all seeing key highlights? Looks like it's not quite there yet.
No, we're just seeing conversations.
Okay, I'm going to try one more time. We're going to share key highlights, and I'd like for us to be taking a few notes from the key highlights. Okay, and we're going to move by room. So I would just like to ask a Twitter version to be shared by the note taker in each room. So let's start with room 1. Let's bring that person up. What are some of the key takeaways or resources that we might gather from this?
John Davis here. We were just wrapping up a really great conversation and it's needed a little bit more time. But one of the things in terms of takeaways was the importance of a vision and just how to prevent a vision from becoming diluted. or how to restore an initial vision. And if that could be based on values and goals. Also, just the navigating power dynamics from a pilot program to a sustainable program, and how something is implemented once that happens, how it stays aligned with the initial values.
Jamie,
Jamie, you're muted.
Sorry, let's go to room 2, and thank you, John. In room 2, what were your key takeaways?
Hi. Yeah, so we had a few questions and particular ways or potential ways to address them. In an example of trying to work with a core partner who isn't willing to play in the project, some suggestions were thinking through what's my workaround, what's my group's next move, what network can advocate for the project toward cultural movement building or potential activism as an alternative or pivot in the project. And another example was a youth project. There was discussion of youth being at the center of decision-making in an ultimate youth project, and having a communication mode across partners throughout the project so that everyone's on the same page when staff are otherwise spread thin across organizations. So making sure that those sort of core values and sort of original references to goals are continuous throughout the project.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, how about room 3? And again, we're looking for just quick Twitter highlights, and we'll put the extra resources in the toolkit.
Great. Can you hear me? Yep.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we got a great, of course, there's never enough time. So, basically the key takeaways are, how are questions around assessment in a way that is meaningful and useful for the folks that are participating, and also for funders, how to do that, and some resources around that, measuring outcomes and so forth, how to engage with anchor organizations that have produced harm in communities, and how to navigate that. It was great, out there's a lot of things to go, and then how to be responsive to different community needs in partnering. So there's more, but that's a quick summary.
Thank you. All right, how about room 4?
So in our group, some questions that came up were how to deal with a partner who was initially really excited, but then started ghosting the project partners, and how to really utilize personal relationships in the city while also looking for other networks, other potential networks and relationships in different departments. We also asked a question around, what is the right approach in moving the needle with partners who are really either stuck in their ways or are gatekeepers, and are deterring certain decisions or certain actions. And something that came up was, maybe approaching it through a community activist lens, as well as thinking about how to utilize journalism. And then we also talked about, just different ways to pivot, and to really look at surrounding neighborhood organizations and other community organizations that might be great allies in pushing for the work together.
Okay, thank you. How about room 5?
Hi, it's Susanna Laramie Kidd here. Our group had brought up a lot of great questions about when you're starting and choosing a partner, and establishing that partnership role, and how to prioritize that. We also talked about ongoing partners where a lead partner has shifting priorities and shifting their participation and causing delay because of changing goals. And we also talked about who government partners who might be very difficult to work with and might even be feeling kind of obstructionist in the work. And so we ended up talking a lot about how to move forward and try to build relationships to some ways to bring your critics closer, and to be less on the defensive when those very difficult relationships are really causing delays.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's go to room 6.
All right, Leah Reisman here, and Marty, feel free to chime in if you want. So we were talking at a lot of 3 kind of projects and questions that really spoke to each other. One question kind of around how we follow Indigenous leadership, and the kind of the leadership and priorities of Indigenous partners in our project, while also continuing to maintain responsibility for kind of like pushing the project forward or kind of shepherding the process. Another kind of question and challenge around managing partners who are important institutional partners but are moving slowly and have a lot of kind of red tape around the work. But then on the flip side, how to manage partners who are very enthusiastic and whose work we really want to elevate in our work or in our project, but that don't have a lot of resources to bring to the table. And then finally, how to partner with government agencies effectively while acknowledging kind of existing conflict and tension between those government agencies and Indigenous groups that have been harmed by those agencies. So I think the kind of through line of all of these questions and that we talked about is how to balance kind of the needs and priorities of groups that have different power. You know, we've heard this in a lot of different folks share outs, how to kind of work effectively with government agencies that you need in order for your project to have the kind of systemic impact that you want it to have, while managing and kind of working with the power dynamics between those agencies and more grassroots groups that have been perhaps like systemically marginalized over time, in part by those same agencies.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, and how about room 7? I think that's our final room, right?
There wasn't a room 7.
There wasn't a room 7. Okay. So there's a lot of really amazing conversation happening. We will be taking these points, taking other resources that came out and putting them together for you all to have so that you can get even more. And then as we're getting very close to our drawing time, so get excited. I want to just share with you quickly, here are a few of the resources that I have used in part that relate to some of the things we talked about today. Feel free to take a screenshot. And we have a whole bunch of links to these and other materials within your toolkit as well. So with that, let's stop the screen share. And I'll just let you know really quickly what's coming up. Our next workshop is happening on the 31st of May, and Teresa is going to be leading that, and that is on creative community engagement. So, and then we'll be doing creative placemaking foundations in July on the 12th. So stay tuned for that. And then on the 19th, working with artists. So many more things to come. But now the moment you've all been waiting for, let's jump into our drawing. Rachel is going to be helping with this. So we're going to pull up a screen. Everybody's names is on it for grantees participating. Sorry, resource team, you don't qualify today. But let's spin the wheel and see who our first winner is. It's Grace.
Oh, wow. I don't know what this means, but I love winning something, anything.
Congratulations, Grace. So you are one of the winners of Allison Orr's new forthcoming book, which has some of the points that she talked about today and others coming very soon. It will be mailed to you. So Melissa is going to reach out to you to get the address that you want that book sent to. There are 2 other winners for today. Let's see who the next one's going to be. Vicky.
Hey, Vicky. Woohoo! That's great. That's perfect. I am really excited to get it. Very timely.
Congratulations. Awesome. All right.
And I'd
Okay,
like to have
everybody.
that sound effect if possible.
Yeah, it's very magical.
It's very magical.
Okay, everybody feel free to unmute for this last one. Let's give some big cheers to the last final winner. All right, everybody ready? Let's see who it's going to be.
Big money, big money, big money.
Wow!
Yay!
All right, Holly.
Da-da-da-da.
Congratulations.
Holly!
Congratulations to our winners. Okay. Melissa will be following up with you on that. So before we leave, I know we want to do a quick exit poll. So that's going to pop up on your screen. And then I want to ask you one question before we head out. So take a look at that first. How much time do people have for this poll? Is it going to close automatically?
2 hours.
2 hours. Time.
2 questions, 2 hours. Uh-huh.
All right. So if you haven't been able to and still want to add in your response, go for that. And just on our way out really quickly, I'd love to ask either to unmute or to share in the chat. What is one thing that you are taking with you that you're going to try to imply or add to your project? It could be a conversation, a resource that you saw. What's one thing you'd like to use?
You said put it in the chat?
Or on mute. Clarifying goals, awesome. Processing time. All right, centering relationships, great. Okay, keep them coming, awesome. And remember, if there are more detailed things that you want to talk through, work with Melissa to schedule a time to set up a call with someone on our resource team. We'd love to chat with you. So many thanks to Allison and Lisa for joining us today and bringing that expertise. Thank you so much. Let's give everybody a round of applause. All right. Until next time, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jamie. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you.